What up, YouTube? This is Steven, and welcome back to another video. In this video, I want to talk about something that's, been on my mind. Something that, I've thought about, here and there, lately. And that's reparations. And, in this video, I'll be speaking about, more so reparations relating to Native Americans and African Americans. So, just putting it out there. That's pretty much, where I'm coming from with this. All right. Do you think that when it comes to Native American people, do you think that reparation money is sort of like hush money from the government? Like, they giving them this reparation money so that, okay, you guys can sort of just take this money, go on these reservations and stay out of pretty much mainstream society. Because to be fair, you don't really see that many Native Americans in mainstream society. At least in the media. I don't really see that many Native American people. And the closest thing to Native American people that I do see would be sort of like mestizos / Latinos. The mestizos that come from Latin American countries. They speak Spanish, perhaps Portuguese. And then I know some people are going to be like, well, if they speak Portuguese, they're not Latino, they're Brazilian. And Latino, yes and no. Latino can, apply to people from Brazil because Portuguese is a language that derives from Latin, etc. But, I'll make that distinction. Okay. Brazilian as well. So yeah, those are the people that you kind of see as far as people with indigenous heritage. But the thing is, they don't really claim it though. That's the thing. And they also come from other countries. So it's not really Native American as in Native United States indigenous population. It's more like Native American as in native to the Americas, But back to my main topic, which is, do you think that reparations is kind of like hush money for people? And I think it sort of is, because I don't really see Native Americans really doing much protesting up to this point before the whole pipeline thing, which I heard is going ahead. The people in charge of it are going ahead and doing the pipeline based on Donald Trump's authorization. But before now, I haven't really heard, before the whole pipeline situation, I haven't really seen much Native American activism, at least in the mainstream media. I haven't seen Native Americans come out and advocate for themselves in their position. And I'm thinking, does it have something to do with reparation money? Do certain Native Americans feel perhaps because we had this money, we don't need to, either we don't need to do it or we shouldn't do it, as far as activism and advocating for your plight and your situation in the Americas. Because I know white people probably gonna be well, we paid you reparations, so it's kind of we have a clean slate now, we even, when really you're not really even. To keep it real, you're not, because you white folks still got the land. White folks still here. White folks still doing what they do. while Native American people, on the other hand, are kind of like, I don't know if Native Americans are forced to live on reservations. I'm not really that familiar, but Native Americans are on reservations. And some people view those, I've heard, kind of like referring to reservations as possibly like concentration camps. I'm not sure. Anyone out there who kind of has some more information, feel free to enlighten me on that. Would you kind of consider it kind of like a concentration camp? But pretty much with this video, I'm just wanting to get you guys' opinion. Do you think that Native Americans and reparations equals hush money? Like, do you think that the United States gives Native Americans reparations as more or less hush money? More or less, just to keep them quiet. Because I heard, this is what I heard. I don't know for sure, but I have heard this a lot. Like when the United States decided to give Native Americans reparations, like a lot of Native Americans like purged their tribal members who were part black. And I think that may have been possibly strategic on the United States part, as well. It could have been strategic on Native Americans' part, because they're like, well, it's more money for like us full-blood Native Americans. But then again, like the ones that are part white still get the benefit, which I guess that whole thing was going to just fall into like colorism, which is a whole topic for a entirely another video. But again, do you think that reparation money for Native Americans is like hush money? Like, what's behind this reparations money? Because it's always something behind something. Folks just don't give you money just to give you money. It's something, it's always kind of like strings attached. What's the strings attached to the reparations money when it comes to Native Americans? I guess that's maybe what I want to know. Was it like, get this money and stay to the side? Because that seems like what Native Americans are doing until fairly recently. Again, but this is, based on the mainstream media. Perhaps, there are, truthfully, there are Native American organizations, There's like at least the American Indian College Fund, as well. There's probably more. I just don't know of them, but there's probably more organizations. But it just is a little strange that the indigenous population of this land is not at least seemingly present, but I guess that is that how things happened, or was that by design? Because remember, like, Native Americans were, like European invaders, colonizers, settlers, they did declare genocide on the indigenous population. And I think that is sort of like the reoccurring theme when it comes to like Native American folk. It's like genocide, like, you don't exist anymore. I know there are, of course, Native Americans who do exist, but I'm saying like that's sort of like the theme. I think like when it comes to black people, the theme is dehumanization. When it comes to Native Americans, I think the theme, kind of like the worst thing to come from like European colonization would be the genocide, While for black people, I think the worst thing is dehumanization. Because, I think initially, from what I've, heard and been taught here and there, European invaders did try to use the indigenous population as slave labor, but it didn't really work that well. It didn't work that well from what I heard, partly because Native Americans were very like very, they weren't immune to European invaders' diseases, like the diseases that they had. Like they were really affected by them, to the point of like dying, being exposed to like, these like European diseases that we still deal with too. By the way, thankfully we have vaccines and whatnot for them. So that was one reason, but also another reason that it didn't take was, from what I heard, is because Native Americans knew the layout of the land very well. So they were able to escape really well because they knew how, where to go, all that good stuff, right? However, when it came to, so for that situation, they were like, well, we can't use Native American people since, we don't have any use for them since we can't use them anymore. Genocide, right? When it came to black people didn't know the layout of the land very well, because this is a whole different continent, Also, black people were immune more or less to European diseases, like, for one reason or another, I'm not sure why, European diseases didn't affect African people that badly. Like, I heard like the worst, like one, it was like, I think a slave of Columbus was exposed to like a black slave of like Columbus was exposed to, his diseases or whatever you want to say. And it was more or less a code for him. Like he just got a code. But another one, the indigenous person like wound up dying, or at least was like on his deathbed, So, unfortunately, black people had great immune systems. Black people were also a very, what's the word? Like, kind of like a very noticeable population, as well. Like there was like a distinct difference between, the way that black people look and the way that white people look. Also, strong, as well. So I think that's why they brought black folk over, because, if they could have did it with Native Americans, they probably would have, just stuck with Native American folk. But for some reason, for the reasons I mentioned, they couldn't do that in America, So yeah, but I guess that what I said just goes back to genocide. Since they weren't able to use Native Americans, it was like, okay, you kind of like get out of here. We'll either, I think they've moved them at one place or maybe like killed, unfortunately, tons of stuff, Also, relating this to black people, as we all know, black people have not received reparations. African Americans and, specifically, the descendants of slaves in the United States have not received reparations for slavery nor Jim Crow. And, it just makes me think, like, what if, by chance, black people do receive reparations? Will there be strings attached to this reparation money? Will we have to live in a certain zone or area? I'm not saying that, black people shouldn't get reparations, because I think that black people definitely deserve reparations. And I also have a video on that about how people shame black people for wanting reparations. Like, oh, you want charity, you want a handout. But it's like, no, we want you to pay your bill. to pay your invoice. This is the bill. Can you please pay it? But I did a whole video about that and how people try to shame black folks who want reparations. But back to this topic, it's just like, what will happen if we as black people receive reparations? Because I'm looking at Native Americans and I'm like, okay, I don't really see much visibility among Native Americans when it comes to like media. I don't see a lot or hear a lot about Native American activism or Native American advocates. And it's like, does that go by the wayside once you get your reparations? Is that like part of the strings attached? Or did Native Americans just put that by the wayside? Or maybe they just feel like, well, we have the reparations, so we don't really need to be doing all this, that, and the other when it comes to like activism. So it just got, it has me wondering, Personally, I think if black people get reparations, black people need to pack up and get the heck on. Hopefully, black people can go to Africa and be welcomed in at least some sort of a sense. Hopefully have like a spot of land, a country at least of their own, and it's not to be like separatist from like the rest of Africa or anything, but, a country sort of like, I guess, like maybe like Liberia, come back, bring their resources, all that money, and bring their resources and sort of just try to build. I think that should happen. But if black people receive reparations, I think that I don't see that happening. I see black people, if they do get reparations, just staying here and just, not wanting to, like, just staying here and not really possibly thinking about, okay, using the reparations to sort of like, build upon. And it's different with Native Americans because Native Americans, this is their land. So like, where are they going? Where are they going? But for, black people, for us, it's different because this isn't like our land per se. Like, we worked it and, our blood, sweat, and tears are in the land, don't get me wrong, but it's not like we are indigenous. We're not the indigenous population though, so if, but again, I don't see black people getting reparations, but I'm just saying, And I noticed, at this point, like I've kind of like gone on to a whole nother subject, and I didn't mean to, but I guess it sort of all intersects, But I'll bring this video to a close, So again, my question ultimately is just, do you think that Native American reparation money is hush money? Feel free to let me know. All right. Thanks a lot for watching. Feel free to comment. Feel free to subscribe. Feel free to give me a thumbs up. Feedback and support are extremely appreciated and extremely valued. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.